Chapter 16. Kate smiled as Jesse helped her down from the wagon. She could not believe how close she had come to losing him tonight, and she wanted to tell him that she cared and that she was ready for the relationship to progress, but she wasn't sure how.
"That was some night tonight, wasn't it?" Jesse asked, holding onto her hand.
She met his gaze, wondering if this was his way of telling her that he cared for her as well. "Yes, it was, and I didn't like nearly losing you tonight."
"I didn't like nearly losing you either."
He pulled her closer and wrapped his arm around her waist.
"I know we started this marriage as one of convenience, but I care for you, Kate."
She placed a hand on his cheek. "I care for you too." He held her gaze for a moment before his eyes closed and his face inched closer to hers. In her chest, the beating of her heart doubled, and all she could hear was the thudding in her ears. She had wondered for days what Jesse's lips would feel like against her own, and when they met hers, they did not disappoint. Kate's knees grew weak as warmth spread through her body. Then suddenly there was a thud, and Jesse's warmth slipped away. Kate opened her eyes and screamed. Then her world went dark as well. When she opened her eyes again, a deep, throbbing pain erupted in her head. She tried to bring her hand to her head, but realized she couldn't move it. Why couldn't she move her hand? Then she realized she was no longer outside, but in the cabin. She was tied to one chair, and Jesse was tied to the other. His eyes were still closed. "Jesse? Jesse, are you okay?"
"He is for now."
The harsh voice made her turn, and the stabbing in her head intensified. The room swam, and she was forced to blink a few times before the man came into view. Kate did not recognize the face, but her instincts told her this was the last robber.
"You are a mighty feisty woman," the man said, as he leaned against the doorframe that led to the bedroom.
He was older, with a weathered face and some silver in his hair.
"I told Bill he should have just let you go, but he wouldn't do it. That boy always did have a stubborn streak."
Boy? Bill Easterly was no boy, but this man spoke as if he was, which could only mean... "He was your son?"
The man's eyes flashed. "Yes, he was, and you took him from me. Took my other son, Robert, too."
"I don't know what you are speaking of. I know no Robert."
"Oh, maybe not with your hands you didn't take him, but he didn't want Bill to come after you. They got in a fight, and Bill's gun went off."
Kate bit the inside of her lip. Robert had been the other robber, and the one Jesse had found in Bill's cabin that day.
"So the way I see it, you have been nothing but trouble since you got here. You are responsible for the deaths of both my boys, and now I am going to enjoy watching you pay."
He pulled out a match, and Kate's stomach twisted. He was going to burn down the cabin with her and Jesse in it. Even if she could find a way to escape herself, she would never be able to get Jesse out, not with him unconscious. So Kate did the only thing she could think of. She began screaming. It took the man by surprise at first, but then his shock turned into a smile, and then a chuckle.
"There's no one to hear you scream out here, darling. You're too far from town and neighbors. If your man were awake, I'd thank him. I couldn't have picked a better place myself."
With that, he struck the match and tossed it on the couch. Then he turned and walked out of the cabin. Kate continued screaming as she watched the match, hoping it wouldn't catch. But it did, and slowly the flames began devouring the couch. "Jesse! Jesse, you have to wake up!" She screamed his name and tugged at the ropes on her wrist, but it was no use. They had been tied tightly, and Jesse showed no signs of stirring. The fire had engulfed so much of the couch now that she could feel the heat filling the room. Oh God, please don't let us die this way. Please send someone to save us. Smoke began filling the room and pressing in on Kate's throat. Her eyes burned, and she was forced to stop screaming, but she did not stop fighting. She continued to pull at the ropes binding her hands and her ankles, and rocking the chair back and forth. The motion made her head hurt even more, but she could not stop. Stopping would mean certain death. The sound of gunfire outside sent Kate's heart rate through the roof. Would Easterly's father come back? Had he injured someone else? As the fire jumped from the couch to the rug, she swung all her weight to the left and then to the right, pushing with her toes as she did. The chair tipped, teetered, and then fell to the floor, causing Kate's teeth to snap together and her head to bounce against the floor. A sharp pain in her arm joined the intensified throbbing in her head, but she continued to twist. This time she heard a cracking sound and felt a little give. But would it be enough time? The fire was already licking across the floor toward them. Kate closed her eyes, sent a prayer for strength, and pulled. Another creak and groan filled the air, but the chair didn't break. Tears filled her eyes and slid down her cheek. She didn't want to die this way, not without seeing her brother again, and not without telling Jesse she loved him. Suddenly, the door to the cabin burst open, and Kate shut her eyes tighter. It had to be Easterly's father, and she had no doubt he would finish the job with his gun, just in case the fire didn't.
Oh, heavens! Kate? Jesse? Are you here?
The voice sounded vaguely familiar, but she couldn't place it. Still, the man knew their names, so he had to be a friend. Here! We're over here! She called out, before a coughing spasm hit her. The thick smoke burned her throat and obscured her vision, but she tried to peer through it to find their angel anyway. In the kitchen! There were footsteps, and then a man's face filled her vision. James? What was he doing here?
Hang on, Kate. Sheriff, in here!
A round of coughing afflicted him as well, and he pulled his shirt over his nose and mouth. The sheriff was here too? While she had no idea why James and the sheriff were at their homestead, she was relieved. Get Jesse. He's unconscious. Did you get the man?
There will be time for questions later, the sheriff said, appearing in the smoke. Right now, it's time to move.
He pulled a knife from his boot and cut the rope from her hands and feet. Then he passed the knife to James so he could do the same for Jesse.
Can you walk?
The sheriff asked, holding out a hand. Kate had no idea if she could, but she nodded. She would certainly try. Pain shot through her right arm and leg as she stood, but she didn't think anything was broken. She allowed the sheriff to support her and hobbled out with him, hollering for James to hurry. As soon as they were out of the cabin, the cool night air enveloped her, and she inhaled deeply, causing her throat to spasm with coughs once again. But she was alive. She followed the sheriff to a spot a safe distance from the cabin and looked back toward the door in search of Jesse. A moment later, James appeared with Jesse slung over his shoulder. Though he limped, James carried her husband to them before setting him down. Did you get the man? Kate asked when her coughing subsided.
We did. He won't be hurting anyone anymore. Do you know who he was?
Kate nodded. He said he was Bill Easterly's father. Evidently Bill and his brother Robert got in an argument about coming after me. Bill killed Robert, the man you found at Easterly's house. Then his father saw Jesse kill Bill. He blamed me for both deaths, and he must have followed us home, because we were attacked shortly after arriving. The sheriff nodded, but his eyes remained fixed on the cabin, now slowly going up in flames.
I'm sorry we didn't get here in time to save your house.
Me too. Kate thought of all the things she'd just gotten back, only to lose again, and another tear raced down her cheek. Is there nothing we can do? He shook his head.
The three of us couldn't get water on the house fast enough, and no one else would make it here in time. Thankfully, there is little wind, and the recent rain should protect it from spreading to the barn.
Kate sighed, but she knew he was right. Jesse will be devastated, but they are only things. I am glad that you arrived when you did. Can I ask, though, what made you come out here? The sheriff turned to the larger man who had been quiet.
You actually have James to thank for that. He wanted to apologize for being so short with Jesse after hearing the news tonight. But I was afraid a fight might ensue between the two, so I insisted on coming with him. We arrived just as the man was fleeing the cabin. We were going to question him, but his reply was gunfire, so we were forced to return it in defense.
Kate turned to James and placed a hand on his arm. Thank you. I know you don't like me that much, and you don't agree with Jesse marrying me, but you are a good man for this.
James grunted. You're welcome, and I don't dislike you. I don't even know you. I dislike the situation, and I miss my sister, but I'm sorry I took my anger out on you.
He looked back toward the cabin.
And I'm sorry that Jesse lost his place. We will help him rebuild.
The sheriff agreed.
Yes, we will. But right now, we need to get the two of you to Doc Moore's to get checked out. I'll get the wagon.
James limped over to where the horse whinnied and stomped her feet. A few minutes later, James returned, helped Kate and Jesse into the back, and then climbed in the front with the sheriff. Kate placed Jesse's head on her lap and stroked his hair, careful to avoid the large bump that was forming. She knew her injuries were mainly physical. And while they would take a few days to recover from, she had no doubt she would recover. But she had no idea about Jesse's injuries. Lord, please let him be okay, she whispered, as the wagon bumped toward the town.